Thank you, Ajit, for that very wide-ranging and very stimulating talk. There was so much in that, and I'm sure there must be many questions in your minds, because he gave a lot of provocative advice. So I would not say too much as a chair now, and just request all of you, just put up your hands and we'll take these questions and Ajit can chair.
I just want to know whether the narcissistic and the ego are connected, because any person who has an ego, some amount of self-love will be there.
Should be there also.
To preserve the basic body conditions, we need to have self-love. Without self-love, the narcissistic will be certain amount will be there always in any human being. So there is no question of narcissism being remaining total. That's what I think.
You're absolutely right. There has to be some degree of self-love. There is something called healthy self-love. And it is well said by many psychologists and even lay writers with sensitivity that you cannot love others unless you love yourself. You have to have some amount of self-love. The malignant self-love is a term coined by the psychoanalyst Eric Fromm. That is the one we are referring to. Where you're totally absorbed with yourself with no consideration for the rest of the world. No. Self-love to the exclusion of the rest of the world. I said that gradually the extraneous is removed. That is the dangerous part.
My only, I don't know whether I can articulate it properly. When you try to help somebody whom you think you are lonely, he is lonely or she is lonely, and that itself probably is helpful to clear some amount of loneliness which you yourself have. Does that?
Absolutely. Also, sometimes you have to be prepared for a rebuff. Who are you to interfere in my life? Pushing you away. So I coined something a few decades ago called Dr. Bhide's golden rule of 3. Reach out 3 times. First reaching out, 1 week later, 3 weeks later, 4th week later you said, listen buddy, the ball is in your court. Let us not pretend to be omnipotent and able to help everybody in every situation. But it will be foolish, even sinful, not to have tried to reduce their misery.
Good evening. I am Dr. Bhaskar, neurosurgeon at MS Ramaya. I believe the risk of premature death is 3 times higher for loneliness compared to alcohol and smoking. Yeah.
We also said that physical health hazards of loneliness have been, and this is study. These are studies that have found the same results. It's the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes per day for over a year. The physical health hazards. Sudden death is well known to be much more common among lonely people than among non-lonely people.
There have been only 2 narcissists who come to you voluntarily. I was just curious to know, were they helped? Like, did they become less narcissistic?
One has stuck on, the other did all that I mentioned. He was very put off by my notions, questioned my competence and walked out on me more than once. Came back after a few days, said, I don't know why everybody keeps recommending you. Not to beat my own drum, a little bit of narcissism for me, please excuse. But he became a revolving door narcissist, but I've lost track of him for a very long time now.
But were there actual changes that happened?
But apart from this, I have had spouses and parents bring people with NPD to me, and we have made some progress over there. The important thing is to break the defenses to as I mentioned, the lack of insight is such a huge impediment.
Yeah, hello doctor. Very nice talk. I just wanted to, having got the figures now, 58% is quite a large number, and this idea of self-reporting always has something that it's not like a fever. And I wonder if there's a sort of FOMO in reporting also, so I want to be lonely too, sort of coming into the question.
True.
But my point is, how much can you sort of really believe these statistics and allow self-diagnosis to play a part in it?
Yes, Madhav, you're absolutely right. And you have come across the research that seemed to suggest that Bhutan was the happiest country in the world. About 10 years ago, that was the finding. The thing is, most of the people did not understand all the questions that were being asked. So there's a huge subjective element in any of this research, which limits the applicability of that particular research. I don't know if the people suffer from FOMO to say that I also want to be counted as lonely. I also want to be counted as a superstar. Yes, possible, but it would be really masochistic to be wanted to be counted as lonely.
Hi, I'm Setu Havnoor. I'm a faculty of psychology. My question to you, sir, is they are defined by their rigid ego defense mechanisms.
Who?
Narcissist and of course other personality disorders also. So the question, one of my PhD students is working on it. So the question is accountability, right? The word perpetrator is used in relational injuries, right? Whether it is parent, child, co-worker or spouse. So how do we deal with, where does accountability come when we know that these are rigid defense mechanisms formed in early childhood, right? I'm sure it's a forensic question, it's a very personal, interpersonal question, it appears in therapy also.
Very true, it's a philosophical question. If you could get a little...
No, but it is a real question, like, the language that we use, like my student keeps using the word perpetrator and I stop her. Like, rethink about it.
Right, so I add perpetrator to my list. My list included gaslighting, trauma and narcissism. Now I'll add perpetrator as well. But very importantly, I think we have to recognize that narcissists will not say, I'm narcissistic. I'm great. That's continuously the underlying theme in their lives. And to undo it is, as I mentioned to your colleague earlier, is a huge challenge, but we have to be persevering to get there.
So anyway, I'll have some neighborly talk. You see, when you were talking of loneliness, is it only through therapy that you treat, or there are some medicines?
No, hardly ever. Medicine would come into the picture if there is physical or mental health issues.
Okay.
Medicine, because many of them are depressed, and many depressed people, if you ask them afterwards, they say, nobody comes to me saying I'm lonely. At least I have not encountered it in my work. I mentioned a whole lot of strategies, some of them very socially activating strategies like the bhajan clubbing and the pint of view. Draw people into these kind of activities is what I would suggest, and that's important. Most importantly, if you feel people around you might be victims of loneliness or might be suffering from loneliness is the right way to put it, then I think we need to reach out and do something about it.
Roxab, are we in the Wittgensteinian territory here? Because lonely, alone, alienated, etc. Whereas in Indian language it is one word. In Hindi, akela, wanti, etc. In Kannada. And it is, as the old song says, I bhi akela, jai bhi akela. And being alone or lonely or whatever is the Indian equivalent was supposed to be the first step in your spiritual journey. This is the journey which made Ratnakar the dacoit become Valmiki, because when the family told him, you are alone, you are responsible for your actions.
Right.
This is one part. And the second is, in the villages there is no sense of, when I go to my village, I see that there is no sense of privacy. Everybody knows everybody. So has any study been done about this problem in the metropolitan areas and in the villages? Even in small towns there is no privacy. So aren't these problems a part of our increasing westernization also?
Yes, but who spared that transition? Most of us are not spared that transition. You have a very wise point to make over there. And I think it's very amply clear to me. I'm going back to something which Mala Kapur told us when we were students. And she said, when I was a child, there was one towel in the house, everybody used that towel. Bath towel we are talking about. She said, nobody minded it. If it became too wet, the next towel was brought in and everybody else used it. Today we live in an age where personal space has become such a strong construct. Don't interfere in my personal space. This notion of personal space did not exist in the Indian psyche from what Sudhir Kakkar has to say until the late 60s, and it became more and more rampant in the metropolises as time went along.
Hi Ajit, thanks for that brilliant talk, which is, we're still reeling about narcissism. I'll ask you a naughty question. Choose not to answer it if you don't want to. I was just thinking that as you walked us through narcissism and all its various facets, in our mind's eye, I think a lot of leaders, you almost named one, but there were many others who came up, So do all these people actually need to go for therapy? And if they're not in therapy, are they a danger to mankind and society? Need not answer it if you don't want.
I want to, and I'd say yes. Yes, they are a danger to mankind and to their respective countries and the world in general, without a doubt.
It's very interesting to see the correlation or anti-correlation between the density of population, density of people, more number of people. You go to, I just 10 days back I was in Bhutan. It's only mountains and greenery. People are very less. They seem to be happy and nobody talks about loneliness. Ours is the biggest, one of the densest populated place. And you also mentioned Europe, like Sweden or any place where you don't see people. This anti-correlation, I'm not able to understand.
I think density of population would be one variable, but that's not the only, certainly not the most important variable, I would think. I think it's a closeness of bonding. Sweden used to have communes, actually, where people got together without fail on the weekends. By turns, they hosted the get-together. I believe that trend was diminishing. I read this in a Lee magazine, either Newsweek or Time, a couple of decades ago. And they were lamenting that this is going away. Soon after that, there came an issue of Time where they said in America, they were reviving service clubs like Rotary and Lions because people suddenly felt the need that they were getting far too isolated and they needed to be in a cohesive group where they had a sense of belonging and they contributed and took from it. Now, these are facets, but I don't know how much the density of population, I mean, the fact that in Sweden or Norway you won't see people very frequently, especially in the colder months, is just an artifact, I think.
I'm just wondering whether, is it genetical or is it environmental or why is it's happening there? I mean, what do you feel the reason for somebody becoming mentally not well?
In everything, genetic vulnerability is always a factor. But it's not only genes. Because there are people who have genes for depression who do not get depressed at all. That is also there. We probably have not refined our understanding of genetics and more importantly epigenetics, because genetics is, while very important, not the be-all and end-all of it.
3.7% of Indians who took the test apparently were the only ones who were living separately. Rest of them came from large families, compared to the US statistics of 30% of them lived alone. So if you look at that from the constant narrative we hear that joint families are diminishing and as a result of it loneliness in India is increasing, that's not what the study says. At least 3.7% is a very small number. It says that invisibility is what is increasing. I wanted to know, sir, what do you think we should do to change that aspect? Because it doesn't seem to be the family dynamics or the living arrangements here. How do you make people
I do believe there is more than a grain of truth in the paradise lost paradigm. That with the breakdown of the joint family, these phenomena, especially loneliness, has greatly increased. Fewer people to fall back on. This study that, so your name, Sir Dr. Bhaskar, is it? Yes, sir. Dr. Bhaskar mentioned it, which I had quoted earlier. They say that surprising that in a country with such strong family values, how could this arise? I need to look at that study in some detail before swallowing its results as valid. I think that this is not dissected out. Professor B.B. Sethi, who edited the Indian Journal of Psychiatry many years ago, also wrote lamenting editorials about loss of the joint family and what it was doing to Indian society. I think we find a lot of happy nuclear families or extended nuclear families who do not suffer from the loss of the joint family so much because of the social circumstances that obtain today. Invisibility. Would you care to expand on that? Do you wanted me to? Yeah, I think my wife and I were discussing this a while ago about how people, if at all they come for a wedding, they want to be there for the selfies, bite of the meal, and not have anything to do with the social relationships that usually were supposed to attend on such functions. This is becoming increasingly common, and we must strive to diminish that.
Thank you very much, sir. But I will take this opportunity to ask the last question.
Your prerogative.
Thank you. This is some thought that has been in my mind for last a few years, which was triggered again in the conversations that we have had. My grandfather's generation, I don't mean my grandfather himself, but his generation, the elders of the family told their children, you have to look after me, you have to be with me. My father belongs to a generation where they told their children, go find your life, go live somewhere. And their children believed that and went and made life somewhere else. So I see my friends' parents in India not alone and ill, but don't want to tell their children. They struggle. Sometimes I intervene to help, but I can't do everything the children do or can do, and they could do, and the children can't do. And made me think, why did that generation didn't tell their children that they need them? So now it makes me think, what should I tell my daughter?
I have no perfect answer to that, but I'll say this. And sorry, I keep falling back on quotational wisdom, as my friend Dr. Sitaram taught me this term, quotational wisdom. Niraj Chaudhary in his book, To Live or Not to Live, makes this point. Do not expect your children to look after you. If they do it, it's a bonus.
Well, I don't know whether children know that they, they are needed.
Properly brought up children would have that sense of gratitude and probably measure up. Even if you're abroad, keep in touch with your parents regularly, see what their needs are, find out whether there's a support system that you can build over here, and periodically not just be dollar children, but be collar children.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir.